So what we are going to do now that I have given you this idea that part of what I'm trying to figure out is how much milk you're going to buy. That's on the consumer side. I'll come to the producers later, but just on the consumer side. As always, I'm an economist. I like to draw pictures. I'm very visual. So what are we going to do? We're going to draw a picture. We're going to draw a graph. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to show you a little bit of very simple numbers, and we're going to use these numbers to draw some graphs. That's all we're going to do. So the way I'm going to start with is that I'm just going to take this idea of quantity demanded depends on price and move on to a very simple idea. If something's cheaper, I might buy more of it. I'm not saying every single one of us will buy more of it. I'm just saying chances are some of us will. That's all. All right? So I'm going to give you a very simple picture of the market for milk. And in this market for milk, A, B, C, D, E, there's going to be 5 people. All right? 5 people. And I'm just going to look at what they're buying at different prices. That's all I'm doing. And this is the price of milk per gallon. And this down here is going to be gallons of milk. So $4, 3, 2, 1. And the thing to remember is that I am actually not paying attention. This is crucial. I am paying 0 attention to what the producers are doing. When I go to buy milk, I don't actually spend a lot of time having conversations about what the producers are doing. I just go, I look at the price, I look at the milk, I buy the milk. And so the idea of consumption decisions actually crucially built on the idea that consumers and producers do not interact except via the market and through the price mechanism. And focusing on that then, okay, let's just look at each of our people, A, B, C, D, E. Here is A. At a price of A, of 4, A buys 1. 3, A is still like, yeah, I'll still buy 1. I don't really need more milk. At a price of 2, A thinks, maybe I'll buy 2 gallons, it's cheap enough. I could drink more milk, maybe I could make yogurt at home, maybe I could bake, whatever. And then price is 1, A is still buying 2. A is really not keeping on buying more. Price of 4, B is like, too expensive. Price drops to 3. Yeah, okay, I'll buy a gallon. 2, I'll buy a gallon still. But when it drops to 1, it's like, okay, maybe I'll buy 2 gallons. And I can do the same for C. I can do the same for D. And I can do the same for E. Now, I want you to look at something here. I've got 5 people here. Some of us like milk a lot. A is jumping into the market even when the price is $4 a gallon. Some of us aren't really that fond of milk. E doesn't enter the market until the price really drops all the way to 1. They're not that interested in milk otherwise. We don't all increase our milk consumption at the same rate. You know, some people are like, I'll buy a gallon, fine. So look at D. They buy a gallon at price 2. They're there even when the price drops to 1. Look at A. A is increasing their consumption, uneven rates, and so on. But the end result is that each individual person is showing a pattern. Overall, people tend to buy more. Tend to. It's not a 100% rule. Nobody buys less. It's not like when it becomes cheaper, you buy less. But overall, if it becomes cheaper, people tend to buy more. And we're going to do more work on why that is in our next videos. But for now, let's just look at this. You buy a bit more. As prices drop, more people who didn't enter the market before. So look at the price of 4, only A entered the market. As it becomes cheaper, people who weren't interested in the market now join the market. So both because existing consumers buy more, and because as prices drop, new consumers enter the market. Here we go. Let's use pink. The market demand is simply the addition across all this. Across all consumers at a price of 4, people bought 1 gallon of milk at a price of 3. That was 2 gallons of milk at a price of 2. 2, 3, 4, 5. At a price of 1, that was 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Notice a very simple thing. There's nothing automatically linear about this, but there is a general rule that as the price drops, quantity demanded increases, ceteris paribus. That is, simply put, the law of demand. My task is now going to be to draw this in a graph, and that graph is going to be called the demand curve. Right? So here, let's do it. It's a very simple graph. I'm going to tell you a little more about this graph in a minute. We're just going to graph that. I'm going to put price on the y-axis, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this. I'm going to put quantity on the x-axis. And what do we have? At a price of 1, we have 8. At a price of 2, we have 5. At a price of 3, we have 2. At a price of 4, we have 1. I join my points. And there's my demand curve. That's all there is to it. It's downward sloping, and the downward slope just reflects the law of demand. Nothing about this downward slope says that it needs to be linear or curved this way or curved that way. We're going to talk about the shape of the curve in the next lessons, but pretty much that's the law of demand. I'm going to give you a few more points about this. Most of you who've done math, you've learned that whenever you draw a function, the independent variable must go on the x-axis and the dependent variable must go on the y-axis. I just wanted to pay attention to something. I flipped it. You are looking at price and choosing quantity, but look at where I put those. Price is the independent variable. Quantity is the dependent variable. In economics, this is the only curve, any market curve, it's the only curve where the axes are flipped. There's a historical reason for this, and that's because in the early days, the guy who developed this curve, his name was Alfred Marshall, he was very famous. He had a slightly different theory of demand. He had a theory of demand where he thought that we had a quantity in mind, and then price depended on that. So the idea was I would go in and say, I want to buy 1 house. And then I would navigate and negotiate and say, I will give you so much money for it. And this is true for a very small number of goods. It's true in auction markets, for example, where there is one unique activity or item and you bid on it, right? This is so much, here is the Picasso quantity, and then different people give me the price. Auction markets, right? But most of our markets, it turns out, don't look like that. So while Marshall isn't wrong, it turns out auction markets are a very special case, and there's not a whole lot of markets that look like that. And as it turns out, Marshall was wrong even about auction markets, which is a different issue. He wasn't thinking of that. He thought that markets look like this overall. But most markets, we don't do that. We don't go in and say, I want a gallon of milk. I don't go up to the Rite Aid ladies and say, hey, I want a gallon of milk. I'll give you $2 for it. Will you accept it? And if they say, no, I won't, I don't tell them, oh, okay, 225, will you accept it? What happens is there is a price, I look at the price and then I decide. So the average consumer is, and listen to this vocabulary, a price taker. Most of us are not price makers, we are price takers. We go to markets, we look at prices, and we make consumption decisions. So the law of demand and the way this discussion works in terms of the story we tell reflects that. The axes are flipped because of the historical error. But just don't forget, what matters is the story. So remembering that, law of demand, downward slope, this is the independent variable, price. This is the dependent variable, quantity. Thank you.